Hatred doesn't dial at 2 a.m. That's what I kept telling myself as I stared at our phone bill, counting the same 47 calls for the third time. 47 conversations between my wife Lyra and her boss, Halden Morrison, the man she claimed made her life unbearable, the corporate shark who supposedly crushed her spirit daily. My name is Orion Vanton, and I'm an IT consultant who believes in data. Numbers don't lie, even when the people around them do. These calls averaged 11 minutes each. That's not "I hate you" territory. That's intimate conversation time. I sat in my home office, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of computer manuals and client files. The split-level house felt different now, like someone had shifted the foundation while I wasn't looking. Through the thin walls, I could hear Lyra in the kitchen, humming while she prepared dinner, the same cheerful tune she'd been humming for months. "Orion, dinner's ready!" Her voice carried that bright, marketing executive enthusiasm that had attracted me 15 years ago. Back then, her ambition seemed charming. Now, it felt calculated. I folded the phone bill and tucked it into my desk drawer, next to the credit card statements I'd been reviewing. Those told their own story. Lunches at expensive restaurants during her supposed stressful meetings, charges from hotels when she claimed to be working late at the office. Our daughter Astra looked up from her homework as I entered the kitchen. At 15, she had inherited Lyra's sharp intelligence and my tendency toward quiet observation. She watched everything, processed everything, said little. "Dad, can you help me with calculus later?" Astra asked, twirling spaghetti around her fork. "Of course, sweetheart. What's the topic?" "Derivatives, finding the rate of change." I glanced at Lyra, who was focused intently on her salad. Rate of change, that's an important concept. Sometimes things shift gradually, and you don't notice until you run the calculations. Lyra's fork paused mid-bite. "Work stuff again, Orion?" "Always work stuff. Data analysis, pattern recognition, you know how it is." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Speaking of work, I'll be late tomorrow night. Halden scheduled another emergency client presentation. That man never considers anyone else's schedule." There it was. Another late night with the boss she supposedly despised. I nodded sympathetically while mentally adding this to my growing list of inconsistencies. After dinner, I helped Astra with her calculus, while Lyra retreated to her home office for preparation work. Through the wall, I could hear her voice, soft, intimate tones that never emerged during our conversations anymore. She was on the phone, and I didn't need to check our bill to know who was on the other end. "Dad, you're not paying attention," Astra said, tapping her pencil against the textbook. "Sorry, sweetheart. Let's focus on derivatives. When you want to find how something is changing, you need to examine the relationship between variables." We worked through several problems, but my mind kept drifting to my own calculations. 14 months of late nights, 37 emergency meetings that never appeared on her official calendar, a promotion that coincided perfectly with the start of her supposed misery. Later that evening, after Astra went to bed, I sat in my office reviewing client files. The house settled into its nighttime routine, Lyra showering, moving around the bedroom, eventually settling into what I assumed was sleep. At 11:47 p.m., I heard her phone buzz. I waited. At 11:52 p.m., I heard her soft footsteps padding to the bathroom. The door closed, and within minutes, I could hear the low murmur of conversation through the thin walls. I opened my laptop and began researching voice acting services. If Lyra wanted to play games with phones, I'd show her how an IT consultant approaches problem solving. The next morning, Lyra left early for her client preparation day. She kissed my cheek, a brief, distracted gesture that felt more like muscle memory than affection. "Don't wait up tonight," she said, grabbing her purse and laptop bag. "This presentation is crucial for the Morrison account." The Morrison account, named after her boss, naturally. I wondered if she realized how transparent her lies had become, or if she simply didn't care anymore. After she left, I called the restaurant where she claimed to have had a team dinner the previous Thursday. The hostess was helpful and thorough. No reservation under Vanton, no reservation under Morrison, no large business groups that evening at all. The first lie crumbled into dust, and with it, 7 others I'd been tracking. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not surprise, but confirmation. The numbers had been telling the truth all along. I spent the morning researching voice actors, looking for someone who could convincingly portray a betrayed spouse. The woman I found charged $400 for what she called relationship intervention services. Professional, discreet, and experienced in emotional manipulation scenarios. Her name was Patricia Kellerman, and her voice carried the exact combination of authority and wounded dignity I needed. We spent an hour crafting the script, rehearsing inflections, planning the timing. Every word was calculated, every pause strategic. Mrs. Holden would call Lyra at 6 p.m. sharp. Patricia Kellerman earned every penny of her $400 fee. At exactly 6 p.m., while I sat in my office with the call on speaker, she delivered the performance of her career. "Is this Lyra Vanton?" The voice was crisp, controlled, carrying just the right amount of barely contained fury. I could hear Lyra's sharp intake of breath through the phone. "Who is this?" "This is Margaret Holden. I think you know why I'm calling." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Lyra finally spoke, her voice had dropped to a whisper. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Hotel records, Lyra. 14 months of hotel records. The Marriott downtown, the Hilton by the airport, that boutique place on 5th Street you seem to favor for your Tuesday encounters." Patricia's voice never wavered, never rose above conversational level. "I have photographs. I have credit card statements. I have text messages. Please, 47 phone calls last month alone. Did you think I wouldn't notice when my husband started taking mysterious calls in the garage? When he began working late every Tuesday and Thursday? When he started buying cologne again after 20 years of marriage?" I had to admire Patricia's improvisation skills. The cologne detail was pure inspiration. "Mrs. Holden, please listen. No, you listen. I'm not some corporate wife who'll quietly disappear while you play house with my husband. I'm a lawyer, Lyra. I specialize in family law, and I'm very good at destroying careers." The threat hung in the air like smoke. I could practically hear Lyra's mind racing, calculating damage, searching for escape routes. "What do you want?" Lyra's voice was barely audible now. "I want you to understand that I know everything. The promotion he arranged for you, the client meetings that never happened, the business trips that were just weekend getaways. I want you to know that your little fantasy is over. I never meant for this to happen. It just... Save it for someone who cares. You have 24 hours to decide how this ends. Either you disappear from my husband's life voluntarily, or I make sure everyone in your professional circle knows exactly what kind of mentorship got you that corner office." The line went quiet. Patricia had hung up with perfect timing, leaving Lyra alone with her panic. I didn't have to wait long. Within 15 minutes, I heard Lyra's car in the driveway, tires screeching slightly as she took the turn too fast. She burst through the front door like a woman fleeing a fire. "Orion! Orion, where are you?" I emerged from my office, projecting concern and confusion. "Lyra, what's wrong? You look terrible." She collapsed into my arms, and for a moment, I almost felt guilty about what I'd orchestrated. Almost. Then I remembered 47 midnight phone calls, and the feeling passed. "Something horrible has happened," she whispered against my shoulder. "I need your help. I need someone I can trust." Trust. The word tasted bitter in my mouth, but I played my part. "Of course. Tell me what's going on." She pulled back, tears streaming down her face. Real tears, which surprised me. I'd forgotten she was capable of genuine emotion. "It's about work, about Holden." She took a shuddering breath. "His wife called me. She knows about us." Us. The word hung between us like a confession. I guided her to the couch, maintaining my expression of confused concern. Knows about what? We've been having an affair. The words tumbled out in a rush. It started 14 months ago. I never meant for it to happen, but he was so persistent, and I was vulnerable after Dad passed away, and you were always working, and I felt so alone. I let her talk, let her justify and rationalize while I discreetly activated the voice recorder on my phone. Every word was being captured, stored, documented. He promised me things would be different once his youngest graduated college. He said we just had to be patient, be careful, but his wife found out somehow. She has evidence, Orion, hotel records, phone logs, everything. How long has this been going on? I asked, though I already knew the answer. 14 months, since right after I got the promotion to senior account manager. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. That's how it started, actually. He said I deserved recognition for my talents, that he could help me advance my career. The promotion. Of course, every step up the corporate ladder had been purchased with intimacy, every advancement earned on her back rather than her merit. Lyra, I need to understand this completely. You've been sleeping with your boss for over a year? She nodded miserably. The late nights, the emergency meetings, the business trips, most of it was cover for spending time together. I hated lying to you, but I was trapped. He said if I tried to end it, he'd make sure I never worked in marketing again. More lies. Even now. I'd heard her phone conversations through the walls, listened to her laugh and whisper sweet nothings to her corporate lover. There was no coercion here, no reluctant victim, just a woman who wanted more than her marriage could provide. What did his wife say exactly? Lyra recounted the conversation in detail, and I had to admire Patricia's performance even more. Every threat had landed perfectly, every detail had felt authentic enough to trigger complete panic. She said she's a lawyer. She threatened to destroy my career, expose everything to our clients, ruin my reputation. Orion, I could lose everything. My job, my professional standing, maybe even custody of Astra if this becomes public. Now she was thinking about Astra. After 14 months of deception, our daughter finally entered her calculations. What do you want me to do? I asked, though I already knew. Help me figure out how to handle this. You're good with problem solving, with strategy. Maybe we can find a way to minimize the damage, keep this quiet. She wanted me to help her manage the aftermath of her betrayal. The audacity was breathtaking. I need time to think, I said. This is a lot to process. She grabbed my hands. I know I've hurt you. I know this is terrible. But we can get through this together. We can fix our marriage, make it stronger. This affair, it meant nothing. It was just physical, just convenience. You're the one I love, the one I want to build a life with. I looked into her eyes and saw desperation, calculation, manipulation. She was already crafting her narrative, already positioning herself as the victim who deserved forgiveness, rather than the architect of our family's destruction. Let me sleep on it, I said. We'll talk more tomorrow. That night, I lay awake listening to her restless movements beside me. She was probably calculating damage control, figuring out how to spin this situation to her advantage. Meanwhile, I was planning my next move. The recording was clear, comprehensive, damning. But it was just the beginning. If Lyra wanted to play games with truth and consequences, I'd show her what happened when someone with my particular skills decided to stop playing defense. The next morning, Lyra called in sick to work. The first time in 3 years she'd missed a day for anything less than a family emergency. She spent the morning pacing the house like a caged animal, checking her phone obsessively, jumping at every sound. I maintained my routine, working from my home office while monitoring her movements. Around noon, she knocked on my door. Have you thought about what we discussed? Her voice carried forced casualness, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. I've been thinking about a lot of things, I said, not looking up from my computer screen. Like how you managed to hide this for 14 months. That takes impressive organizational skills. She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. I know you're angry. Angry? I finally looked at her. Lyra, I'm trying to process the fact that my wife has been living a double life for over a year. Anger seems inadequate. She sat down across from my desk, adopting what I recognized as her serious business discussion posture. Even now, she was treating this like a corporate negotiation. I want to show you something, she said, pulling out her phone. I've been documenting how controlling and demanding Halden became. Look at these text messages. She showed me a series of messages that painted her boss as an aggressive pursuer, herself as a reluctant participant. The timestamps were recent, all from the past 12 hours. You created these this morning? I said. Her face flushed. I'm trying to protect us, Orion. If this becomes legal, I need evidence that I was coerced. Legal? The word hit me like a revelation. You're already thinking about divorce proceedings? No, that's not what I meant. I meant if his wife follows through on her threats, if she tries to sue me or get me fired. But the damage was done. She'd revealed her true concern wasn't saving our marriage. It was protecting her assets and reputation. I made a mental note to call my attorney that afternoon. Lyra, I need you to be completely honest with me. No more lies, no more manipulation. If we're going to work through this, I need the whole truth. She nodded eagerly. Ask me anything. How many times did you sleep with him? I don't know exactly. Maybe 20 times? 30? I pulled out a calendar and began calculating based on her documented late nights and business trips. According to your schedule, you had private meetings with Halden at least twice a week for 14 months. That's over 100 opportunities. We didn't always... sometimes we just talked. About what? Work stuff. His marriage problems. How unhappy he was at home. Classic affair dialogue. I wondered if she realized how predictable her responses were. What about the promotion? You said it started after you became senior account manager. He said I deserved recognition, that my talents were being wasted in my old position. And the new responsibilities? The client meetings? The travel requirements? Her hesitation told me everything. Some of those were flexible arrangements. Flexible how? The Morrison account doesn't require as much hands-on management as we reported. Some of the client meetings were actually personal time. The Morrison account. Named after her lover used to justify their affair and apparently largely fictional. The corporate structure she'd built around their relationship was more elaborate than I'd imagined. How much of your job is real, Lyra? All of it. I do excellent work. My performance reviews are outstanding. Performance reviews conducted by the man you're sleeping with. She stood up abruptly. You're trying to make this sound worse than it is. I'm trying to understand the scope of the deception. 14 months of lies, a fictional account to justify your schedule, performance reviews from your lover, a promotion based on personal rather than professional criteria. Help me understand which part isn't as bad as it sounds. I never wanted to hurt you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It just happened gradually. One conversation led to another, one dinner became a pattern, and before I knew it, I was trapped. Trapped by 47 phone calls last month? Her eyes widened. How do you know about the phone calls? Our phone bill. I review our expenses every month, remember? 47 calls to Halden's personal number, all after midnight, averaging 11 minutes each. That's not trapped, Lyra. That's engaged. She sat back down, her corporate composure finally cracking. You've been tracking my calls? I've been trying to understand why my wife claimed to hate a man she spoke to more than she spoke to me. The truth of that statement hit both of us simultaneously. In the past month, Lyra and I had probably exchanged fewer than 20 meaningful conversations, while she'd found time for 47 intimate phone calls with her boss. I need some air, she said, standing again. This is too much. After she left, I called my attorney, David Reeves. We'd worked together on several client contracts over the years, and I trusted his judgment. Orion, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? I need advice about a family matter. Hypothetically, if someone discovered their spouse was having an affair and had evidence of that affair, what would be the best way to protect their interests? Hypothetically, that someone should document everything, avoid confrontational behavior, and consult with a family law specialist immediately. How much evidence are we talking about? Recorded confession, documented lies, evidence of professional misconduct, and a pattern of deception spanning over a year. David whistled softly. That's not hypothetical evidence, Orion. That's a divorce attorney's dream scenario, especially if children are involved. One daughter, 15 years old. In this state, that level of documented infidelity and deception would heavily influence custody and asset division decisions. The spouse with evidence of betrayal typically receives favorable treatment, particularly regarding the family home and primary custody. I felt something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction, but clarity. The path forward was becoming visible. David, I need you to recommend a family law specialist. Someone who understands complex financial situations and professional misconduct cases. I'll send you 3 names this afternoon. Orion, are you okay? I'm processing a lot of new information, but I think I'm going to be fine. That evening, Lyra returned from her drive with red eyes and a determined expression. She found me in the kitchen, preparing dinner. I've made a decision, she announced. I'm going to end things with Halden tomorrow. I'll request a transfer to a different division, maybe even look for a new job. We can start fresh, rebuild our marriage. I continued chopping vegetables, considering her offer. What about his wife's threats? I'll deal with that when it happens. Maybe if I end the affair immediately, she'll leave me alone. And if she doesn't? Then we'll face it together. As a team. Team. Another word that tasted bitter now. Lyra, I appreciate the gesture, but I think we need professional help. Marriage counseling, maybe some individual therapy for both of us. She nodded eagerly. Yes, absolutely. Whatever it takes. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. 14 months of lies had changed her into someone I didn't recognize, someone who could compartmentalize betrayal and calculate damage control with corporate efficiency. There's something else, I said. I think we should separate temporarily, just until we can sort through this with professional guidance. Her face went pale. Separate? Orion, no, that's not necessary. I told you, I'm ending it with Halden. It's not about Halden anymore. It's about trust. I need time to process what you've told me, and I think you need space to figure out what you actually want. I want our marriage. I want our family. You wanted those things 14 months ago too, but that didn't stop you from pursuing other options. She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a new edge. If you push me away now, if you refuse to work on this together, you'll be throwing away 15 years of marriage over a mistake. A mistake that lasted 14 months isn't a mistake, Lyra. It's a choice, a series of choices repeated over and over again. That night, she slept in the guest room. I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of protecting my daughter and myself from the fallout of Lyra's choices. The recording of her confession was safely stored in multiple locations. The phone bills were documented and filed. The attorney recommendations were in my email inbox. Lyra had built an elaborate architecture of deception, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I was the one who handled our family's information systems, our financial records, our digital security. If she wanted to play games with data, she'd picked the wrong opponent. Lyra left for work early the next morning, claiming she needed to have the conversation with Halden before losing her nerve. I suspected she was actually coordinating their stories, making sure they had aligned narratives before his wife escalated her threats. After she left, I began my own investigation into the network of people who had enabled her deception. 14 months of lies required more than just two participants. It needed a support system, people willing to provide alibis and cover stories. I started with Kara Venner, Lyra's best friend and frequent lunch companion. Kara lived 3 blocks away with her husband Greg, and she'd been conspicuously absent from our social gatherings for the past year. When someone suddenly becomes scarce after years of regular contact, it usually means they're hiding something. I called Kara's number at 10 a.m., knowing she worked from home as a freelance graphic designer. "Orion, is everything okay?" Her voice carried immediate concern, which told me she was expecting problems. "I need to ask you about something, Kara. It's about Lyra." The pause stretched long enough to confirm my suspicions. "What about Lyra? How long have you known about her affair with Halden Morrison?" Another pause, shorter this time. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Kara, Lyra confessed everything yesterday. I know about the hotel bookings, the alibi texts, the cover stories. I'm not calling to blame you. I just need to understand how extensive this has been." I heard her take a shaky breath. "Orion, I never wanted to get involved. She said you two were having problems, that you'd grown apart. So you did know. She needed someone to talk to. She was confused, unhappy. I tried to talk her out of it." "By booking hotel rooms under your name?" The silence confirmed what I'd suspected. Credit card records would show payments from Lyra to Kara, reimbursements for expenses that couldn't appear on Lyra's statements. "She said it was temporary," Kara whispered, "that she just needed time to figure things out." 14 months is a long time to figure things out. "I know. I told her that. But she said Halden was going to leave his wife, that they were planning a future together." This was new information. Lyra had portrayed the affair as meaningless, just physical attraction and convenience. But she'd been planning a future with her lover, discussing long-term strategies with her best friend. What kind of future were they planning? "I shouldn't be telling you this. Kara, your husband Greg is a good man. He deserves to know that his wife has been actively participating in the destruction of a 15-year marriage. How do you think he'll react when he finds out you've been enabling adultery for over a year?" The threat was subtle, but clear. Kara's marriage was built on the same foundation of trust that Lyra had shattered. If Greg learned about his wife's involvement, their relationship would face the same crisis. "They talked about moving away together," she said quietly, "starting fresh in another city. Halden said he could get Lyra a position at his company's West Coast office." "What about Astra?" "Lyra said she'd fight for custody, that she could prove you were an absent father, too focused on work to be an effective parent." The strategy was becoming clear. Lyra hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been planning an exit strategy, building a case for why she deserved to take our daughter and start a new life with her corporate lover. "Kara, I need you to document everything you know. Dates, conversations, financial arrangements, future plans, everything." "I can't do that to Lyra. She's my friend." "She's your friend who put you in legal jeopardy. Adultery is one thing, but conspiracy to defraud custody arrangements is something else entirely. You could face serious consequences for your involvement." I was stretching the legal implications, but Kara didn't know that. Her breathing became rapid, panicked. "What do you want from me?" "The truth. In writing. A detailed account of what you know and when you knew it." "And if I don't?" "Then I'll have to let Greg know that his wife has been actively sabotaging a neighbor's marriage while planning to help that neighbor relocate his daughter across the country." The leverage was cruel but necessary. Kara had made herself an accomplice to Lyra's deception, and now she had to choose between protecting her friend and protecting herself. "I'll write it down," she said finally. but I want immunity from whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything except protecting my daughter and my legal rights. Your cooperation will be noted." After hanging up, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and disgust. Manipulating Kara felt wrong, but she'd participated willingly in the manipulation of my family. Sometimes fighting fire requires fire. The phone rang 20 minutes later. Lyra's voice was tight with anger. "What did you say to Kara?" "I asked her some questions about your affair." "You had no right to involve her in this." "She involved herself when she started booking hotel rooms for you and your lover. She was just being a supportive friend. Supportive friends don't help married women plan custody strategies against their husbands." The line went quiet. Lyra was probably calculating how much Kara had revealed, adjusting her own strategy accordingly. "Orion, you're making this much more complicated than it needs to be. I'm gathering information. You've been lying to me for 14 months. I need to understand the scope of those lies before I can make any decisions about our future." "Our future? You're talking like our marriage is already over. Isn't it? You've been planning to move across the country with Halden. You've been building a custody case against me. You've enlisted our friends to help you deceive me. What part of that suggests you want to save our marriage?" "Those were just conversations, possibilities we discussed. It doesn't mean I was actually going to do any of it." "But you were keeping your options open. Everyone keeps their options open." The casual admission hit me like a physical blow. She'd been treating our marriage like a business arrangement, maintaining multiple strategies while waiting to see which one offered the best return on investment. "I need space to think," I said. "This conversation isn't helping either of us." "Space to think, or space to plan your revenge?" The word hung between us like an accusation. Revenge. As if wanting to protect myself and my daughter from her calculated betrayal was somehow vindictive. "I'm protecting my interests, Lyra, the same way you've been protecting yours for the past 14 months. That evening, Kara delivered a handwritten account of her involvement in Lyra's affair. The document was thorough, detailed, and devastating. It confirmed that Lyra had been planning an exit strategy almost from the beginning, that the affair was never meant to be temporary, and that my wife had been systematically building a case for why she deserved primary custody of our daughter. I scanned the document and saved it in multiple secure locations. Then I called David Reeves. "I have additional evidence," I told him, "and I think I need that family law referral sooner than expected." "How much additional evidence?" "Documented conspiracy, financial fraud, and evidence of planned parental alienation. Orion, you need to be very careful how you handle this. That level of evidence could result in criminal charges, not just divorce proceedings." "I'm not interested in criminal charges. I just want to protect my daughter and ensure a fair resolution." "Fair might be an understatement. With what you're describing, fair might look like primary custody, the family home, and significant financial advantages." I looked around my office, at the home I'd worked 15 years to build, at the family photos that now felt like monuments to a lie. Fair was starting to sound like exactly what I needed. The next few days passed in a strange suspension of normalcy. Lyra went to work, came home, helped Astra with homework, and maintained the facade of a woman trying to repair her marriage. But I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the constant assessment of angles and advantages. She'd ended her affair with Halden, or at least claimed to, but the damage was already done. The trust that had taken 15 years to build had been systematically dismantled over 14 months of lies. On Thursday evening, while Lyra was at what she claimed was a legitimate work meeting, I sat down with Astra to discuss her college plans. At 15, she was already thinking about her future, researching universities, planning her path forward. "Dad, can I ask you something?" she said, looking up from her laptop. "Of course. Are you and Mom getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the chest. "Why would you ask that?" "You've been sleeping in separate rooms. Mom's been crying when she thinks no one is listening. And there's this tension in the house that feels like when the Hendersons split up last year. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw an intelligent young woman who deserved honesty, not more lies. We're having some serious problems, I said carefully. We're trying to work through them, but it might not be possible. She nodded, processing this information with the same analytical approach she brought to her calculus homework. Is it because of her boss? My heart stopped. What do you know about her boss? I know she talks to him a lot. I've heard her on the phone late at night, and it doesn't sound like work conversations. She paused. Also, she's been different for months. More secretive, more defensive, like she's hiding something big. I realized that Lyra's deception hadn't just affected me, it had created an atmosphere of dishonesty that our daughter had been living with for over a year. Astra, if your mother and I do separate, I want you to know that it has nothing to do with you. You're the most important thing in both our lives. I know, Dad, but I also know that sometimes people grow apart, and sometimes they make choices that hurt the people they love. She looked directly at me. I just want you to know that whatever happens, I understand. That night, I lay awake, thinking about Astra's words. She understood more than either Lyra or I had given her credit for. She'd been watching, listening, analyzing the deterioration of her parents' marriage with the same intelligence she applied to everything else. The next morning, Lyra announced that she'd requested a transfer to a different division at work. I want to minimize any complications with Halden, she said. Make a clean break from that situation. What did he say about that? He wasn't happy, but he understood. He's dealing with his own marital problems now. I wondered if Margaret Halden, Patricia Kellerman's fictional creation, had followed through on her threats, or if Halden was simply managing the fallout from his own guilty conscience. Lyra, I've been thinking about what you said, about working on our marriage. She looked up hopefully. And? I think we need professional help, but I also think we need complete transparency. No more secrets, no more lies, no more calculated responses. I agree completely. That means I need access to your phone, your email, your financial records, everything. Her expression shifted slightly. That seems excessive. 14 months of lies seems excessive too, but here we are. She was quiet for a moment, weighing her options. What about your privacy? Do I get the same access? Absolutely. I have nothing to hide. Fine. We can exchange passwords tonight. But I knew she wouldn't follow through. People who build elaborate deceptions don't suddenly embrace transparency. She was buying time, figuring out how to sanitize her digital footprint. That afternoon, I received a call from Margaret Chen, the family law attorney David had recommended. She'd reviewed the preliminary information I'd provided and wanted to schedule a consultation. Mr. Vanton, based on what you've described, you have an exceptionally strong case. The recorded confession alone would be significant, but the documented conspiracy and evidence of planned custody manipulation puts you in a very favorable position. I'm not interested in destroying her. I just want to protect my daughter and ensure a fair resolution. I understand, but you need to be prepared for the possibility that your wife might not approach this situation with the same restraint. People facing significant losses often become desperate, and desperate people make poor decisions. Her words proved prophetic. That evening, Lyra announced that she'd changed her mind about the password exchange. I've been thinking about it, and I believe we need to rebuild trust gradually. Immediate access to everything feels too invasive. Invasive? I stared at her. You've been lying to me for over a year, and you think honesty is invasive? I think forced transparency isn't the same as genuine trust. And I think genuine trust isn't possible without complete honesty. We were at an impasse, and we both knew it. She wasn't willing to provide the transparency necessary for reconciliation, and I wasn't willing to continue living with calculated deception. "Maybe we should take a break from each other," she said finally. "A trial separation might give us both perspective." "Where would you go?" "I could stay with Kara for a while." I almost laughed. She wanted to stay with the friend who'd helped orchestrate her deception, the woman who'd documented every detail of their conspiracy in a handwritten confession. "I don't think Kara's house is available," I said. "She and Greg are dealing with their own marital problems right now." Lyra's face went pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Greg found out about his wife's involvement in your affair. He's not particularly happy about it." "You told him?" "I didn't have to. Kara told him herself, after she realized the legal implications of conspiracy to commit fraud." The lie came easily, but it served its purpose. Lyra was beginning to understand that her network of enablers was collapsing, that the people who'd helped her deceive me were now protecting themselves. "You're trying to isolate me," she said. "I'm trying to understand the scope of your deception so I can make informed decisions about our future." "Our future? You've already made your decision. You're planning to divorce me." I looked at her. This woman I'd loved for 15 years. This stranger who'd been systematically dismantling our marriage while planning her escape, and realized she was right. "Yes," I said. "I am." The next morning, I filed for divorce. The divorce proceedings moved with surprising speed, largely due to the overwhelming evidence of Lyra's deception and misconduct. Her recorded confession, combined with Kara's written statement and the documented pattern of lies, created an almost insurmountable case. Lyra hired an aggressive attorney who tried to paint me as controlling and manipulative, but the strategy backfired. When you have 14 months of documented lies on one side and meticulous record-keeping on the other, the narrative writes itself. The custody evaluation was particularly devastating for Lyra's case. When the court-appointed psychologist interviewed Astra, our daughter's responses were clear and mature. "I want to live with my father," she told the evaluator. "He's been honest with me throughout this process, while my mother has been lying to our family for over a year." The financial discovery phase revealed even more damaging information. Lyra had been using company resources for personal expenses, claiming business costs for her affair-related activities. Her employer, faced with evidence of misconduct, quietly requested her resignation rather than face a potential scandal. Halden Morrison also faced consequences. His wife, the real Margaret Halden, had indeed discovered the affair through her own investigation, and their divorce was proceeding parallel to ours. His company, unwilling to tolerate the liability of executive misconduct, offered him early retirement. The interconnected web of deception that Lyra had built over 14 months collapsed in a matter of weeks. On a cold Tuesday morning in March, we sat in a conference room while our attorneys finalized the settlement agreement. I received primary custody of Astra, the family home, and a favorable division of assets. Lyra received supervised visitation rights and a significantly reduced financial settlement. She looked across the table at me with an expression I couldn't quite read: anger, regret, calculation, defeat. All of it mixed together into something that no longer resembled the woman I'd married. "I hope you're satisfied," she said as we prepared to leave. "I'm not satisfied," I replied. "I'm just finished." 6 months later, Astra and I had settled into our new routine. She'd adapted to the changes with remarkable resilience, focusing on her studies and her plans for college. The house felt different without Lyra's presence, quieter, more honest, somehow lighter. I was cleaning out my desk when I found the phone bill that had started everything, the document that revealed 47 midnight calls and began my investigation into my wife's deception. I stared at those numbers, remembering the man I'd been when I first discovered them. That man had believed in the possibility of reconciliation, in the power of honesty to heal betrayal. in the fundamental goodness of someone he'd loved for 15 years. That man was gone now, replaced by someone harder, more cynical, but ultimately more realistic about human nature. I filed the phone bill in a folder marked Evidence Archived and closed the drawer. Astra knocked on my office door. "Dad, I finished my calculus homework. Want to check my work on derivatives?" "Of course," I said, following her to the kitchen table. She showed me her calculations, her neat work demonstrating a clear understanding of how to measure the rate of change in complex equations. "You've got this mastered," I told her. "You understand that derivatives help you see patterns that aren't immediately obvious. Like how you figured out Mom was lying?" The question surprised me with its directness, but I shouldn't have been shocked. Astra had inherited my analytical nature and her mother's intelligence, but without the capacity for deception that had ultimately destroyed Lyra. "Something like that," I said. "When you pay attention to data over time, patterns emerge. Changes that seem gradual are actually quite dramatic when you run the calculations." She nodded thoughtfully. "I'm glad you paid attention to the patterns, Dad. I'm glad you figured it out." I looked at my daughter, this remarkable young woman who'd navigated her parents' divorce with grace and wisdom beyond her years, and realized that something good had emerged from the wreckage of my marriage. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, covering the familiar landscape of our neighborhood with a clean, white blanket. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new calculations, new patterns to analyze and understand. But tonight, sitting at the kitchen table with my daughter, helping her master the mathematics of change, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The numbers had told their story. The truth had been revealed. Justice had been served. And for the first time in over a year, the equation balanced perfectly.